second thing is body awareness. So if you develop your sense of body awareness, like, where am I tight? Where am I loose? How does this feel in my body? And even more than that, what are my reactions? When this person moves towards me, do I become stiffer? Do I become looser? Do I become more relaxed? All of these things support you to take the information that your teacher's giving you and to make it something. So if they say,
Hey, all right. So I am now on the line with a Miss Dana Dobrota, who is a Kizomba and Semba dancer and instructor, currently living in Brisbane, Australia. But you were born in Sydney, Australia. Is that correct?
That's right. And it's Brisbane. Us Aussies say Brisbane.
Okay, excuse me, Brisbane.
Brisbane.
So yeah, you're a dancer, but you also are a body psychotherapist, and you are the owner of Body, Mind, and Bloom. And
Yes.
so I definitely want to speak on that because yeah, I'm not too familiar with body psychotherapy. But
Sure.
how are you doing today, Dana?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's bright and early here with the time difference and very hot. But it's a good morning. How about you?
Okay, so I will not complain. I'm off tomorrow. I had a nice little 3-day weekend, so I got one more day, so I'm excited.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah. Um, so I guess I really would like to start this interview out, Miss Dana. I'm very curious to know, what was your childhood like growing up in Australia, in Brisbane, or in Sydney? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I think like most people, I had a very Aussie childhood in some ways. But my mum is Italian and my dad is Serbian. So I grew up very much within a European culture, I guess. And the wonderful thing about being in Australia is that it's a little bit of a melting pot and people tend to dabble in lots of different things. So lucky for me, both of my parents got into Latin dancing very young. And so I learned salsa from my dad when I was a little girl. I think I didn't think it was dancing. I think I just wanted to be with my dad. I just wanted to play with my dad and he was dancing. So I just kind of started doing that. So I grew up very much within the Latin, social dancing community as a kid.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Oh, so yeah, you said you just kind of grew up, trying to imitating with your dad. What did your parents do? Can I ask you that?
My dad was a credit manager at a bank, and my mum has always been a nanny and in childcare. Yeah, she's a real mama, you know. She's happiest when she's looking after somebody.
Okay, sure. No, I definitely understand that. So yeah, growing up in that household, I'm very curious to know how important was music in that household?
Actually, I don't think it was, to be honest. My household was really calm, so we didn't listen to a lot of music. When we did listen to music was on the weekends mostly. So we used to go for long drives with my dad, and he used to pump mostly 70s music actually. And I think that, whether or not you grow up with music and, so many people, I think, come into dancing for the first time and, they're hearing music for the first time. I think music is natural. So it doesn't matter when you sort of start listening to music or whether it's from your childhood or not. I think if you saturate yourself in music, and the music that you love or that you want to dance to, I think there's a way that your body responds and really absorbs that.
I definitely understand and I agree with that. Uh,
Hey, if you could leave a like and subscribe, that would be amazing for the channel. Let's get back to the video.
and I agree with that. You kind of we spoke on this yesterday. You said that like it's that those vibrations, right? You pick up on that. So
Yeah,
I
indeed.
understand that. Um, Let me ask you this real quick. Growing up, what were some of your childhood hobbies? What did you enjoy doing as a child?
So when I was little, we did a few things. We did horse riding. So that was one of my things that we used to do weekly with my, it wasn't my horse, but I used to call him my horse, Custer, God bless him. I wonder if he's still alive today. And we used to do lots of arts and crafts and things with my mum very much. Um, I guess as a kid, I just played, and I never thought of dancing as a hobby. I just thought of it as something I did, you know. But I think we just like to play and ride bikes and all of the things that parents would never let their children do now, down the street with no supervision, no watches, no phones.
I definitely understand that. This, that's even more impressive because you grew up in that Australian heat. That's really impressive.
Yeah, I think when you don't know any different, that's just the way it is. Just make sure that when you're wearing, okay, we say thongs, but flip flops, but we call flip flops thongs here. So if you have rubber thongs on or rubber flip flops, just be careful when you're standing on asphalt or concrete because they may melt in the summer. So if you're going, you need to go quick.
You told me yesterday it was we say 40 Celsius, 40 degrees Celsius, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, that's it's oh yeah, so that's 104 Fahrenheit, 104 Fahrenheit. Here, which is absolutely insane that it gets that hot there.
Yes. I mean, depending
Yeah.
where you are in Australia, it can get hotter or cooler, thankfully. Cooler, yeah.
That's so yeah, so you're growing up in Australia and you say, you truly enjoyed playing and everything. Is dancing something that you always did or was it just something that you did with your dad?
Well, there was a point that I did a lot of it when I was a little kid, probably from 5 to maybe 10 or 11 or 12. And when I started to hit puberty, I became much too cool to dance, of course, much too cool. And then I did other kinds of dance, like more hip hop, R&B, jazz, kind of other types of dancing. Um, because who wants to be with your parents? Not me. Um, um, and then I actually got back into dancing again as an adult. I think when I was about 20, 24. I mean, I danced sometimes through that period, but really I got back into it at about 24 after a relationship breakup. And I'm sure so many people get into dancing for the first time or again after a relationship breakup. And then I just got addicted. Really, I was thinking, what have I been doing? What have I been doing this whole time?
Okay, and I
Yeah,
definitely understand that.
yeah.
And so real quick, going back to when you were a kid, do you remember what you wanted to be growing up as a
Yes.
child? What you aspired?
I was going to be a barrister, which is a very, very high paid lawyer, because my rationale for that was that would give me enough money to buy a horse.
So you needed right there was a horse, right?
Absolutely. I mean, money was my main motivation.
And so yeah, is that so you want to be a barrister, which I've never heard of, honestly. I thought you meant a barista, but okay, a barrister, which
No, a
is something totally
barrister.
different. Okay,
In
all right, sure
Australia,
enough.
they wear the white wigs.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm picturing what you're talking about. I understand it. Okay.
but
Okay,
they only
sure enough.
so you need the money to buy a horse.
Sure enough. So growing up in Australia, you have dreams and you have great dreams and aspirations. I'm
Hmm.
very curious to hear what happens what happens after you graduate high school.
So after I graduated high school, I started university and I did a business degree because I knew that someone would employ me if I had a business degree. And I did a degree in international studies because during the course I would need to live overseas for a year. And so I thought, well, that sounds fun. Um, and I really love cultures because I think growing up in Australia, um, you know, where I grew up in Sydney is the most multicultural place in Australia. And for me, it was very rare to see, what people think of as Australian, blonde haired, blue eyes, tall and lean, this is not what I grew up around because the area that I grew up in was very multicultural. And so I always found it interesting, the jokes and things that would come out. I mean, for example, I'm Italian and Serbian. So if we have a piece of cake, we have a piece of cake, it's a real piece of cake. And, in the home, if someone wanted a small piece, they would say, cut me an Aussie piece of cake because an Aussie piece of cake is small to us, because it's a different culture. So I think that there's a way that anyone who grows up in Australia, and I imagine probably similar in the USA or the UK or other places, although you are a part of that culture to an extent, you also have this other kind of flavor that belongs to somewhere else.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine at least I hear often that, Australia is very Western culture influence. Is that true?
I would say it definitely depends where you go. Um, so I think that it is Western, of course, it's a Western country. But I think depending on where you go, and where I'm from in Sydney, for example, 20 minutes from where I grew up, you have a very Vietnamese area. So everything there is Vietnamese. And I've been to Vietnam, and it's like, apart from having, like meat laid across scooters, which doesn't happen here, it's the same. Or there's areas that have a much more Middle Eastern influence, or areas that have a really big Indian influence, or a big a Japanese influence, a Chinese influence. So it really depends, I think, where you grow up. In Brisbane, where I am, and further north, Queensland and the western part of Australia, is and Tasmania, which we usually forget about, um, is much more Anglo-Saxon, or sort of white, blonde hair, blue eyes, this type of thing. But where I'm from in Sydney and Melbourne as well, is much more multicultural.
And then those are probably some of the bigger cities, right?
Yes, Sydney and Melbourne, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, sure enough, sure enough. So you're speaking on you go to university and you major in business. You said you had to study abroad. What did you have to study at? Where'd you go?
I lived in Italy, um, because my mum is Italian, and I never learned the language or anything. So I lived there for 12 months, and obviously learned Italian, which I no longer speak because when I learned Portuguese, it recorded over it in my brain. Um, I lived in Genova, which is sort of the northeast, northwest. Yeah, near France.
Okay. And what was this? What year was this?
2010.
Okay, I'm very curious to hear. I've never been to Italy. So how long were you there and what was that experience like for you?
Well, I was there for about a year, and I did a fair bit of traveling in that time because I chose the university that had the shortest semesters so that I could travel more. I guess my experience was mixed in that I found some really beautiful friends who were also on what they call Erasmus. People that I'm still friends with today, a couple from Portugal, a couple from Lithuania. So I met some really beautiful friends. But interestingly, in terms of the Italian culture in Genova, where I was, it really didn't gel with me. I think there was still a lot of patriarchy there. When we would leave clubs at, crazy o'clock in the morning and we would walk home. We had men following us home. We had people assuming we were prostitutes even during the winter where we were wrapped, from head to toe. You could not see almost anything of our skin, maybe our fingertips. It really didn't gel with me. And I guess the other thing was that it was very monocultural. So everyone was the same. If I walked into a lecture with my very tall, gorgeous Lithuanian friend, we stuck out like two sore thumbs because everybody else had the same puffer jacket, the same jeans, the same shoes, the same brown hair, the same brown eyes, the same olive skin. It was just, I don't feel comfortable when it's like that because I really love the variety and I love a sense of inclusiveness and that everyone feels okay and that they belong with their difference.
Okay, that's very interesting to be honest. So
Mm.
yeah, so
Good
see,
for a holiday. Definitely good for a holiday.
okay, so just sort of visit then, not to live then, huh?
For me, and this is my personal experience in one place. I'm sure many other people have different experiences than me, but I can only speak for myself.
Of course, of course, of course. So so you visit Spain. I'm sorry, Italy. Um,
Yeah.
and when did you start getting into, I guess, dancing again? Was this around that time or after it?
I think this was about 2 years later, 2 or 3 years later. Yeah.
Okay, so you visit Italy, and then so you graduate, I imagine, right? And what did you graduate with exactly?
A Bachelor of Business and then a Bachelor of International Studies.
Okay, sure enough, sure enough. So what happens after you graduate? Do you stay in Australia or?
Yeah, I stayed in Australia and I was actually looking to study primary school teaching because I knew that I don't care about money. So I thought a business degree, even though I majored in human resources, probably wasn't the space for me. And I started working at the Archdiocese of Sydney Catholic Education System in HR. So I started was working and studying, and then I thought, gosh, I actually can talk to people and care about people in HR as well. And I don't want to take home with me, even though I do that all the time now. But at that time, I didn't want to take work home to mark and things like this. And then I discovered actually Kizomba and, well, at that time, Urban Kiz that I thought was Kizomba and body psychotherapy at the same time.
Okay, so well, um, I want to get into all three or all of those subjects. So, I guess how did you get introduced to Urban Kids Kizomba? How did that come about?
So I went out dancing with a friend of mine on a Sunday night in Sydney, and there was a salsa bachata Latin, I guess, social, and so I was dancing with him, and then now I know it was a ghetto zouk song. At the time, he said it was a Kizomba song came on, and I think he had done maybe one or two classes. But he was African, so he had a really beautiful sense of movement and groundedness. And we danced, I think probably a basic 2, a basic 3, maybe, this kind of thing. But what really intrigued me about the dance, I guess, was number one, that it was in a closed hold, which I love, and when I was growing up, everyone danced salsa in a closed hold mostly. You had a spin for an embellishment or a little fun, but it was mostly for, in the embrace. So I really liked that. And the second thing I really found intriguing, that there was no rhythm I was keeping. And so I had to have such a sense of calm inside to know what was happening next. So, yeah.
Definitely, I definitely understand that. I'm very curious to know, what is the dance scene like in Australia?
Well, there's lots of dance scenes here. Salsa is relatively big everywhere, but depending on where you go, it has a different flavor, whether it's more, has more South Americans dancing there, or whether there's more school tour people, it really depends. In Brisbane, there's a really lovely foho community, because there's lots of Brazilians here. So I think it depends. In terms of Kizomba, the Kizomba, the real Kizomba community is really, really small, because mostly people dance urban kiz here, but identify themselves as Kizomba dancers.
Okay, confused. So yeah, you spoke on that. I actually did not know that there was a big Brazilian population in Australia, because I know forró is very, very popular in Australia. Or I'm sorry, in Brazil. That's a very popular dance. So that's really cool actually to hear about that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have many Kabobs here. I've looked on the census information. No, we don't, unfortunately. So that's why Kizomba is so big.
Okay, I understand that. I can understand that. So you one night you get introduced to Urban Kids Kizomba. And are you hooked from that moment?
I was curious from that moment. But it took me a little while to action it, because I enjoy salsa. I grew up dancing salsa. I love salsa music. But I was curious. So I after some time, I looked up, Kizomba classes, and I eventually went to a class that was a Kizomba class, an urban kids class. And I don't have a lot of patience when I'm learning. I'm like, I want to know this. I just want to get into it, be able to social dance. And so I remember booking in a lot of privates, like 10 hours of privates, with this urban kids teacher.
Yeah, real quick. Who was your first instructor? Do you remember his name or her name? Their name?
His name is Felix, who most people know in Australia. He actually came from an area sort of close to where I live, and in the area that I live, it's a little bit rough. So what I liked about him was his feedback to me was, it was so rude. It was so rude and so direct. I remember when I was dancing with him, and he would say, "Why are you so heavy? You don't look that big."
Wow. Okay. Shucks.
Or he would say, "Why are you fighting me? I'm not trying to hurt you. Why are you fighting me?" And although in terms of the dance technique, it wasn't as helpful. In terms of the way I was holding my body, and I was holding tension in my body, I wasn't able to dance this style. I had to learn and unlearn and relearn lots of things. And, unfortunately, as much as I think everyone would love for this to be the case, you don't say, "Oh, I have tension here. I'm going to relax." That's not how it works. So I was really lucky at that time that I was doing a lot of body psychotherapy. So when things were coming up in my privates, I would go back to my therapist and I would say, "I'm fighting with my upper body. Can we sort that out?"
So real quick, one, I don't know much about psychotherapy, and I imagine a lot of bottle psychotherapy, and I imagine a lot of people didn't know either. So maybe for someone who was in that same predicaments as yourself who is carrying attention in their upper body, um, what words of advice or what help can you give them? What did you do to help yourself with that?
So I guess there's a couple of things. So the way I worked through that was with my therapist. So you look at I guess maybe to go back a little, just to give you a short overview of maybe what body psychotherapy is. So the basic premise of body psychotherapy is that we're a whole person. Okay, so we're not a head, we're not, a body, we're not just spirit, we're not just willpower, we're not just belief systems, we're all of these things in one beautiful package. Or some people think it's not beautiful, but I always think it's a beautiful package. We're miracles. I think people are amazing. So when there's something that's in one area, it's likely in all the areas. So that means that if there's tension in your body, it's likely not just in your body. The wiring in your brain in that area is also going to have some kinks in it. And your belief systems probably have some kinks in it. And the way you behave is also going to have those same kinks. So when we look at, for example, people holding a lot of tension at the top of the body, we can look at it from a body perspective. And in my classes, we do lots of things, how to open, release, allow to sink down. And from a body perspective, I would say the number one way to release tension in your upper body is to ground through the floor. Because most of the time, people are holding tension in the upper body to create some sense of strength or power or okayness. And if we drop that to the floor and how we really ground through our legs and our feet in the floor, our upper body doesn't have to hold because there's safety in another place in the body. So that's the main way I would say to lighten the top of the body. But also, if there's a resistance to that, there may be other things going on in the body that are just locked in, like I don't want someone to get close to me, so I get really stiff. So, okay, how can we help you to learn how to create your comfortable distance that doesn't make you stiff? So it depends what the cause of the issue is as to how we unravel that a little bit to make the dancing better.
Hey, that's actually very interesting. Um, so let me ask you this then: for someone who may not have access to maybe a therapist or to, your services, is this something that they can work through themselves?
I think there are certain things you can do. So I run classes in live, but I also next year will be running classes online about basically how to make your body well, how to support your body to release, to open, to ground, all of these things. So that's one option, of course. You can come to the online classes and then we can slowly work through your body because it's all about conditioning, right? I guess the other thing is people can work through some things themselves, but ultimately most of this is unconscious. So the reason that it was such a gift from that teacher was because no one told me that before. Not who is going to tell you, look, babe, you're really heavy. Very few people. So I think it's really important, I guess, to connect with a good teacher who or even a friend who will really be able to give you honest feedback about things that you may not be aware about. And then the second thing is releasing that area. So perhaps some people release the area through physiotherapy or through massage or through yoga and stretching. So even if you don't go to a body psychotherapist or even if you don't come to an online class, there is still a way that it's about getting good feedback that you trust and then working through that area of the body.
Okay. Okay. I was going to ask you a question. Getting back to dance, you spoke on how Felix may not have been the best instructor. He was somewhat direct. Um, I'm very curious to hear, I guess why did you stick with dancing, even though it sounds like Felix may have not been the best person to learn from. What made you endure that?
So I don't know how long I would have stuck with urban kids. And the thing is, I mean, if people are direct with me, I have no problem. I actually prefer it. I like communication out the front door. And if most people know me, I say things sometimes that are inappropriate, or, I say words in my class like anus and, things, and people get funny. I'm just, talk to me straight. It's all good. In terms of why I stuck with, and I guess dancing in general in terms of the urban kids and then Kizomba genre, is because I found Kizomba, real Kizomba. So I went to a festival, and Lucia Nogueira, who's one of my she's my mama bear. She's such a beautiful woman and a lovely dancer, and I am forever grateful to her. And there was also another Kizomba dancer and Kizomba teacher and DJ called Vasco there. And he was playing some music. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I like it, and that was Kizomba and Semba music. And then I had a dance with him, and I was like, I don't know what this dance is, but my body likes it. So I moved more and more toward that type of music originally, and then to the dance that goes with it that obviously reflects the music.
And so was this back in 2012?
No, this was 2015. 2015.
Okay, sure enough. And so I guess I'm very curious to hear about. Hmm. Well, actually, let me ask you this. Actually. So you said that initially, I guess you were more so learning urban kids, and then
Mm-hmm.
you started to learn Kizomba.
Yeah.
Could you put into words what is the difference between Kizomba and urban kids?
Oh, okay. I think there's lots of differences. And I hold the belief it's a different dance. So I just want to preface that. So the way I see Kizomba is African to begin with. And I think that and we can dance in different ways and have different styles within that, but ultimately it's an African dance. And so when I look at how someone moves and how I know whether someone's dancing Kizomba or not, is personally I look for certain things that actually are not just in the body, but are in the whole personality, cultural personality of that person. So, how someone walks, how they hold themselves, in particular, the relationship between the floor and the feet, the soft knees, the soft pelvis, I think is really important, because when we look at Kizomba, the bottom half of the body is really where we see the Africanness. We see how the traditional, and when I say traditional, I mean a whole set of music that's traditional, not traditional Kizomba, which is what so many people say, which for me doesn't make sense. But when we see that people can express themselves, they can move in a way that really pays tribute to the tribal dance styles, or they can still have a more I guess, elegant, European look about them, but those feet and the ground, that relationship stays the same. And how they push through their feet is really important. In terms of the upper body, really the upper body connection is, in my eyes, more European, because as we know, traditional African dances are not danced in partnership chest to chest. We know that Kizomba is a newer dance form, and doesn't have centuries and millions of years maybe of tradition involved in them. So I think the top part of the body you can see in any closed hold dance, essentially. In terms of urban kids, everything is up when I just look at the body. And I'm not talking about the music here, which is obviously the master. The music is the most important. But when we look at urban kids, all the energy is up. It's not about grounding through the floor. It's more about that ultra light, almost submissive in my eyes, position of the woman doing whatever it is the man is instructing her to do. And the only expression she has is her arms or her bum. This is the main feature, and they do it well. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some people do it really well. For me personally, this is a much more Western way of expressing, whereas, in Africa and for African women, you can't be a pushover. You can't let people walk all over you. You need to be strong in your legs. A man's not going to take your weight away from you. They're not going to take your power away from you. This is super important. Being who you are is super important. You're not at the whims. You're not at the whims.
I definitely understand that. I think that's very true, though. I spoke with Miss Rakita Alta, and she spoke on, I think her and Lucia, honestly, her, Lucia, and Tanya Mendonça, they speak about, things that they're seeing in the dance scene, especially dance socials and everything, how the women, our fathers, will just kind of wait on the sidelines, waiting to be danced. And
Absolutely.
she feels like, I guess what she noticed, like in Angolan culture, African culture, the women would just dance themselves instead of just waiting on the sideline. Mm-hmm. That's something that yeah.
And it's the same with salsa. If you go out with your girlfriends, especially your South American girlfriends, when you get to the club, you're not going to stand on the side of the floor. You're going to all move and dance together, and it doesn't stop you being asked to dance. But I guess this is something in my eyes that also comes very much from this perception that, well, if I'm a follower, I have no opinion on music. I can't express music. And within the dance, of course, there's a level that you're really, you're listening to the music, but you're really feeling for the music through your partner more so. But when you're dancing alone, hey, the music is there for you. Enjoy your body, enjoy how you feel, and not in a way necessarily to style or to perform or to show, but what does your body want to do? How do you, what makes you feel good when you're listening to the music is really important.
Definitely. Yeah, of course. So I'm very curious. So, you said in 2015, you start taking Kizomba. I guess you go to the festival. Do you start taking classes with I forgot his name. Do you start taking Kizomba specific classes after that, or what happens after that festival?
I started chasing Kizomba. But it was not always easy to find. So there wasn't any Kizomba teachers where I was, or what I identified as Kizomba because of how I felt and the music that was playing and how I felt. I had this image, this imprint in my body of what Kizomba was. And so I was looking for that, and I was very fussy as to if it wasn't that for me, that's it. That's not Kizomba for me. And so thankfully, Lucia Nogueira came to Australia a few times. And so I chased her all over Australia. We had Miguel and Susanna also come, and I also chased them all over Australia. And there was also a beautiful Kizomba teacher who actually teaches Kizomba in Melbourne, Lam, and I chased him a little bit. Because he's from the Congo and he has, his beautiful way of dancing. So I did some chasing basically, and then the rest I worked on what I learned. And I guess this is something really important, is that teachers cannot teach you everything. And what I mean by that is they give you inputs and you have to take that and do what you will with it. So I had very limited input just purely for because of location. I had very limited input, but when I would see Lucia, I would make sure I had a private with her, and I would write down everything that she said to me around feedback, and I would work on those areas however I could. So if she says, when you step, you do a diagonal step instead of a C shape, I would stand at my photocopier at work and do C's with my feet, C's, C's, C's. Or if she says, you need to relax your tummy, like there's this so much tension in your tummy and you can't have movement because there's tension. I would go to my therapist and I'd say, I need to relax my tummy. Let's work this out, So where there's a will, there's a way. And if you take the gold that you get, you can really invest that in yourself and you can develop even without constant input.
Real quick, I want to speak on what you just said. And this may be the same answer as what you said earlier, but for someone out there who, as well as has tension in their tummy, is there any advice you can give them? How does one release that tension? Is there anything practical they can do?
Absolutely. So I would, I could spend the whole day doing different exercises with you here. So I think that there's a couple of things. And again, we're a whole body. So before we just release the tummy, we actually need to release further down. So I would probably say releasing the pelvic floor is step one to releasing the tummy, because having a contracted pelvic floor muscle does a lot to the body. It tightens all of the glutes. It tightens the lower tummy. It tightens this whole area. So when we release the pelvic floor, it actually allows us to ground through our legs. So if we have a contracted pelvic floor, we won't be able to feel energy all the way down to the floor because there's something holding up. So one of the things I do, and I've done this a million times, and I have to say this because I want to pay tribute to a beautiful therapist I once had. He said, you can't shit and run at the same time, which means that you can't feel biologically, chemically anxious when you have a relaxed pelvic floor. You can't be in flight or fight when you have a relaxed pelvic floor, because your pelvic floor is telling you we're okay. We're okay. So that means that the pelvic floor is essentially the muscle that holds up your insides. For women, basically, where I recommend doing a visualization is basically at the opening of your vagina is the place where your pelvic floor, you'll feel your pelvic floor muscles most. And for men, it's basically that position between your anus and your scrotum. So just kind of there. So if you imagine a little shape, any shape you like, and you imagine that shape actually at that part of your body. So for women, it would be the opening of their vagina. For men, between their anus and their scrotum. So you imagine a really little shape, and usually I close my eyes when I do this. So we use the breathing, which is in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then we also use the visualization of this shape in that area to support the release of the muscles. So with every breath in through the nose, we breathe in as normal, and then we breathe out and we actually open the jaw and we release some sound with ha. And then we breathe in again and we release with a ha. That's it. Now with that breath in, that shape stays the same size, but with the breath out, we let the shape get a little bit bigger. We breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. Just little by little. That shape grows larger and larger. And you continue this exercise until you feel like that shape in that part of your body. It can't get any bigger. And then you just sit, and as you breathe in, it becomes a little like a jellyfish. So it closes a little with every breath in through the nose, and with the breath out, it gets bigger again. And with the breath in, it closes, and with the breath out, it opens again. So as you create your breath more fully in the body, that shape, that opening and closing of that shape is something that will release the pelvic floor. And also it's something you can do even when you're dancing. So if you realize, oh, I'm all tense, I'm all caught up, just use your own breath and slowly open, 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 and then your whole body comes back to calm.
Okay.
But I would recommend definitely relaxing the jaw and making sound. So most people do this. This actually creates more tension in the jaw. And as long as we have tension in our jaw, we're going to have tension in our pelvis. Relaxed jaw, relaxed pelvis. So once we relax this, the tummy and the other areas, it has like a knock-on effect through the body.
Okay. And that makes sense, though. You have tension anywhere. It's going to translate somewhere else as well. So, of course.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, that's awesome. So I guess
Now
how
you're
big are you on
relaxed.
how big are you on meditation? I'm very curious.
I don't do sitting meditation. So I guess there's two types of meditation. One is more of a crown or upwards-based meditation, which they tend to use in a lot of, yoga and lots of disciplines is more of an upward connection. And they identify, I guess, spirituality as being part of connecting to something greater upwards. The kind of meditation I do is more embodied. So it's a movement-based mindfulness meditation, which includes expression, it includes breathing, it includes maybe some visualizations, but about the body to support the changes in the body. And the connection is with the ground as well as above. So it's kind of like a big line that goes from the top all the way through to the bottom, because there's so much, that reacts in our body. As research shows, you put your feet on grass, 15 minutes a day. And then if you have a depression, that there's a significant, a statistically and clinically significant change in the depressive symptoms. It's just because of all the atoms and the neurons, and I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but it changes the way we are. We're meant to connect with the earth, with nature.
I definitely understand that. So we were speaking on, I think the last thing you said before I kind of asked you a different altogether question. You said, teachers cannot teach you everything, and so I wanted to ask you, I guess, do you have any hints, tips, words of advice for students out there in anything? What is the best way to learn that? I guess if you give a question, if teachers can teach you everything, then
Yeah.
what is the optimal way to be a student?
So I think there's a few things. Dance, and as a human, we're very plastic. So our brain constantly changes, our body constantly changes, everything is changing. So if you want to learn a dance, you need to condition everything. So number one is music, because if your body does not really feel, and your brain and your ears and everything does not become attuned to the music, then the progress is going to be limited. And when I say music, I don't just mean ghetto zouk. Ghetto zouk is a very simple form of music in terms of the way that the music is, the layers of the music is very simple. So if you listen to lots of ghetto zouk, you're going to attune to the beat. That's because that's what's asking to be heard. Whereas, all sorts of African music, dombolo, zouk, Afro zouk, kassav is kassav, just kassav. End of
I was
interview.
legit.
Kizomba music, Semba music. There's compa. Tribal music, just drums, funana, holiday, morna. There's so many. So the more you attune your ear, you attune your body to feeling and listening to this music, it will automatically improve your dancing because it's from that genre. It's from that continent. It within its roots, it transmits the culture. So this is really important. The second thing is body awareness. So if you develop your sense of body awareness, like, where am I tight? Where am I loose? How does this feel in my body? And even more than that, what are my reactions? When this person moves towards me, do I become stiffer? Do I become looser? Do I become more relaxed? All of these things support you to take the information that your teacher's giving you and to make it something. So if they say, okay, everyone needs to, I don't know, push into the floor and push through the floor, don't push up. And you're kind of like, what the hell's that? And your body's just like not even programmed for that. Okay, so I can't push through the floor. Are my ankles tight? Okay, maybe I need to stretch out my ankles first. So it's like some detective work a little bit to take the barriers away.
I definitely understand that. Real quick, let me ask you this: Why is it important? Why is it important that in Kizomba we ground ourselves to the floor? Why is that so important?
I think there's lots of reasons. So I guess one of the things for me personally is that I believe that dance should promote health. And I know as a body psychotherapist that the more grounded we are through our feet, the more our nervous system will be regulated and we will be able to feel more pleasure and sensation in the body because we're safe. So that's number one. But also is that this is an African dance. So the second reason is culture. So you can't be dancing an African dance and not be holding your body the way an African person would, because then you're dancing you, and that's cool, but you're really not paying tribute or paying a sense of respect. And I guess I have a lot of respect and gratitude towards, people like in Africa that have given me this. It's not just Kizomba, but like African music. I listen to it all the time. I love it. It makes my body happy. It makes my heart happy. I'm so humbled and so grateful, and I have so much respect for that, for African culture and African people, because they've given me a beautiful gift in my life. So, I want to also pay my respect with how I move and how I listen. I'm not going to try and dance Kizomba on some other kind of music, because it's like, number one, it doesn't make sense. But two, like, what are you doing? This is a beautiful dance they've given, you've got to do your best. So number two. And number three is because from a biomechanical point of view, all of the balance, ginga, everything, the way you step, the angles, you get, everything comes from the feet first. So when people say, oh, but I want to move my bum, and, for me, people comment on that. And I think, forget about the bum. Forget about it. If you get good feet, if you work on your feet, you have no issues. Feet. It's all about the feet.
And so real quick, I know at one point, and maybe it's still ongoing, but there was maybe some tension between Kizomba and urban kids, like those dancers. And do you think, did that stem from the fact that maybe one group felt that you were messing with their culture, maybe, or how I don't know, maybe not messing with it, but trying to change it, maybe?
I think there are lots of people who could make a comment better than I could. around that, because I'm not Angolan, right? I'm not African. I'm not from a PALOP country. What I can say, however, is that for me personally, I believe in justice and paying respect to where we receive things from. So for me, it's if I take someone's identity, I can use their name, but that doesn't mean that I am that person. So I think it's really important that, and I guess this is also cultural. I know in Australia, and I'm not sure if it's like this in the US, but you know, in Australia, we're very individualistic. So I dance because I'm expressing myself, and you know, I feel the music how I feel the music, and I want to dance this because that's what I think. Very good. That's everyone's choice. However, I feel like, you know, we are ultimately, it's like cultural colonialism continuing. You know, Africa has been colonized by so many different groups. It's been pillaged, you know, the history, it makes my skin crawl, really. It just is beyond wrong. There's no words to describe how wrong it is. And you know, the same thing has happened in Australia to our Aboriginal populations and our Torres Strait Islander populations. Like, it's just wrong, and every part of my being says it's wrong. So when I'm very mindful of that, and I'm also very mindful that, you know, if we continue to steal things, and I'm saying we as in white people, Western people, people from a different place, if we continue to steal things from Africa and we continue to use things that come from Africa to make money, or we continue to take things from Africa to actually you know, make up our own and think we're better, we're actually just continuing colonialism. So for me personally, I can only do so much. I would love to bring someone from Angola here to Australia to teach. So I don't have to teach. I don't want to teach. I want it to come from the mouths of the people from the culture. That would be my ideal. But what I can do is I can continually direct people to where it's from. I can continually to show in my body and say, you know, it's African, it's African, it's African. And whether people argue it's from Angola, it's from Cape Verde, the music, the dance, whatever, I can at least direct them to the continent without saying, you know, any political things.
I get you. I think you trying to be as authentic as possible. I think that is, you know, the best thing you can do, and that's very impactful though as well. I'm very curious. So you've been living in Australia your whole life. Can you put into words how the Kizomba scene, and I guess in urban kid scene, how has it changed since you've been involved?
Well, I've been actually living in Lisbon, so I've only recently came back to Australia.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so I went to Europe originally to go to festivals because that's what everyone says. And then I realized, why am I going to festivals when I can just go to Lisbon, where there's a huge Palo population? And then I went to São Tomé, and Angola is on the list for this year. You know, I don't know that it has changed that much, to be honest, in Australia. I think one of the positive changes that have happened is that people who have travelled elsewhere or who came from overseas and are actually in Kizomba rather than urban kids, there is a slowly growing awareness around what is Kizomba and how we can pay more respect to the culture, and also how we can just enjoy. Like, let's face it, it feels better. You can quote me on that. Kizomba just feels better than urban kids for me. So I think that there is a growing awareness, and it's slow, and you know, there may not be as much uptake and everything, but I think we're very slowly moving towards having greater awareness, you know, on the weekend. It was really beautiful. We had Kizomba in the park, which we always do, and we had another event advertised as Urban Kiz. And that was really wonderful because usually people advertise it as Kizomba and it's not. So, you know, all props to people who are just naming things correctly. That's all.
I would love to hear about your time in Lisbon. So, when did you first move to Lisbon? What year was that?
So, my intention was not to move to Lisbon. I went traveling for 3 months. That was my intention. And after my first week overseas, I just thought, shit, I don't want to go. It was so nice.
You didn't want to go.
No,
You didn't want to leave?
I didn't want to come home yet. I wasn't
Okay.
ready. And thankfully, you know, I was able to stay. And so actually my first night in Lisbon was absolutely traumatic in one way. So I went to Lisbon, and I come from Australia where everyone learns to dance mostly at a school. Nobody is inappropriate in any way. People are not trying to pick up because they don't want to ruin their scene. You know, it's very different. And when I first went to Lisbon, what I didn't realize, and I learned afterwards, is people are not going to dance. Like, they're going to a club.
Ulterior motives.
So there was clubbish behavior.
Of course.
And I was, you know, really bright-eyed and Kizomba. And I remember being in, like, dancing and thinking, well, what is like my leg, and then, like, it took me a little while to be like, is this happening? Like, nothing was happening, but it was just the way I was being held, the intention and energy I could feel. I was
You
like,
could pick up on that, of course.
this is weird. And so I would end the dances because I had enough kind of to be like, this does not sit well with me. And so I ended the dances. And then it was from that point that I had to learn, you know, where does the dance fit within culture? Where does the dance fit for people, you know, for Palo people? Because you have some people who love to dance and who are just bliss, who are just bliss to dance with. And you have people who are really friendly, and you have some people who really are looking for, you know, a little treat to take home with them. And you have a range of people. So even though it might sound silly, I was really naive in thinking, well, everyone's there to dance. No, you know.
I think you highlight something very important though. Yeah, dancing socials, like in the States as well. I've been to plenty of socials and you spoke on it. Yeah, socials are very different than a club scene in the States. So I definitely understand that. And so that's actually very eye opening to see that Kizomba is actually a club dance apparently in Lisbon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a club. I mean, different places in Lisbon have a different feeling and different aesthetic, for example. But I mean, when I realized, okay, so if you're dancing with a palop that you don't know, if you're dancing more than 3 songs, they probably will get an impression that you might be interested in them. Not everybody, of course, but it depends on the person, and you need to gauge the person. So I really didn't have these skills. I didn't have these skills to gauge people.
Real quick, what year was this? You said you got serious with around 14, 15? What year? Okay, oh, this is recent. Shucks. Okay.
Yeah, so I was at 2018, 19.
Okay, and so continue. You say your first night was very traumatic. Continue. Please speak on it.
So I started messaging my girlfriends who had been to Lisbon or who were living in Lisbon going, what is this? What is this? You know? And then I thought to myself, well, actually, you know, I've been out dancing salsa for a long time and I knew a lot of South Americans and it was the same. of course. People are people. It doesn't matter where you go. And I had this sense of like Kizomba, something else. No, it's a dance, and it's a way people come together. And we're not with family, and there is a lot of ghetto zouk playing, and there's not going to be a lot of Kizomba dancing to ghetto zouk. It's going to be motarashinha. And you need to be aware of your intentions. You need to be aware of who you accept to dance from. You know, for me personally, when I first got there, I was just happy to dance, you know. So anyone who asked me any song, I was like, yes, 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 yes. But you know, after time, you become discerning. You know, okay, if I ask someone to dance who I don't know and who's not my friend, they will probably think I have a certain intention or that I have a certain interest in them. Or if I dance for a long time, there may be a perception that I'm interested in them. Or if I accept a dance when there is ghetto zouk music playing, they're going to think, well, she finds me attractive. Maybe she wants something. I know now when I don't know someone, when Tarashinha comes on and it's the first song they ask me to dance, I will say no. Because unless I'm interested in something more, the first dance with someone I don't know is going to send a message. So it's these kind of underlying messages that take time to learn.
I want to. You spoke on it just now, but I want to ask you. And so I guess it's kind of like a two-part question. You know, the situation that you just were in. You know, that club scene. Do you have any advice for fathers out there who, you know, are in that same predicament? And I guess, you know, maybe tips on maybe how to be more discerning of the dances and of their dance partner.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, like, yeah, run with that there, please.
I think that the first thing for anyone, and I don't think this is limited to dance, I think this is in life, is feel into yourself as to what's happening. So it's really hard to feel when the intention is off if you're not really aware of your own feelings, because you'll feel it. I think it's also really important for women that come from outside an African culture to understand that it's really important to set boundaries rather than be polite. So I know in an Australian context, if you give anyone feedback or say, I don't like something that someone's doing when you're dancing, people take it to heart. And there's a way that you can deliver that in kindly, and that same way you may need to deliver kindly and very clearly in a club context. So for example, if someone's dancing with you and their hand starts to move a little bit, the first thing I would do is grab their hand, pull it up, and give them a look. Before I spoke Portuguese, giving them a look. I can, obviously, if you speak Portuguese, it's different, but you can make a joke or something to get the message across. But even just a look is enough for people to understand. If that behavior repeats, it's important to stop the dance. So if you're not comfortable with something, it's really important to communicate that. And also, I think it's, you know, most of the friends that I made in the dance scene, like in the community, were because they tried something and I gave them something with a bit of personality, still kindly, but also get into line, my friend. And then they're like, oh, well, maybe I won't have luck with you, but we can be friends. You know, it's cool. You're nice enough, you know. I think also the thing is a lot of people, when they go, and this is not just to, you know, in Lisbon, but probably to Africa as well, you know, people will say things to you like, you dance like an Angolan. You know, you're the best dancer, or you're so beautiful, or this connection.
Yeah, these just compliments, fake compliments.
Amazing. Yeah, this connection. And of course, everyone likes positive feedback. So the thing is that, you know, a lot of women are going to these clubs or going places and someone says, you dance like an Angolan, and someone says, this connection I've never experienced before. And, you know, exactly, like you're laughing. But people want to believe this. And I'm not saying it's not true all the time. You know, maybe 1% of the time it's true, you know? And if someone says this to me, I don't take it as true or not true. I just say, I maybe make a joke, you know, like someone says, you dance like an African, and they're African. I say, that's funny. You dance like an African too. You know, I have a bit of a joke. That's fine. But if you take this to heart, you need to really be aware that there may be other intentions as well. And it's not in a negative way. Maybe they like you. Maybe that's their way to engage with you so that they can ask you out on a date and love you and marry you and have children with you and be faithful forever. I mean, I don't know. But I think it's important to keep your wits. You know, the dance is blissful. No question. Sometimes it's like you walk off like drunk because it's just beautiful, you know, like you think, God, how is this created? How can it feel so nice? You know, I don't know, the music, the person, the energy, oh, it's beautiful. But this doesn't mean anything other than the fact that that moment is really beautiful. You know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Um, I wanted to ask you something, shucks. Oh man, I want to ask you a question. Okay, well, he's like, you already know it. You already know. But so please, continue with your story of Lisbon though. So that first night was traumatic for you, but how else was Lisbon for you? What was that? What was that like?
The first night, and I asked my friends about, okay, how do I navigate this situation? It was amazing. You know, I'm really lucky that one of the friends that I knew in Lisbon, in Italy, he is from Sintra, which is just near Lisbon, and you know, he saved me. He found my apartment for me. He did everything for me. God bless him. You know, Pedro, you're the best. You know, but the experience was great. I think that I met beautiful people there, and I think that a lot of the relationships that I formed are very specific to that context. You know, I go back to Lisbon. You know, I was back in Lisbon in June, July. I was back overseas, and you know, you go there, everyone hugs you, everyone kisses you, asks you how you are, they miss you, blah blah blah, and it's lovely. I guess for me, the thing is that what I realized over my time in Lisbon is that some of the best moments of my, like the most joyful moments of my life have been in Lisbon clubs. Listening to the music, you know, the music, like, oh my gosh, it's just like not even dancing, just sitting and listening. It's been some of my most joyful moments, and watching and just being there, you know, feeling the gratitude that, you know, of being there. And I guess the thing is, every person needs to find for themselves how much you want to invest in those beautiful, joyful moments. Because, you know, from that experience, I took a handful of people and, you know, beautiful memories, really beautiful memories. And I took a lot of understanding and richness and appreciation for the culture. I learned Portuguese, which is wonderful when you listen to Kizomba music, of course, and to talk to people. And, you know, I definitely grew as a person in a lot of ways because I was so naive. In some ways, I didn't really get it. You know, before I left Australia, I didn't get it.
What do you mean by it?
I didn't get that this was a cultural dance, you know? And I know that sounds silly because everyone talks about it, but I didn't get that it was a cultural dance. I didn't get the feeling that I didn't understand, you know, really what it meant in terms of for people. You know, this is like speaking, this is their bread and butter, this is their everything. You know, if you can't eat, it's okay, you can still dance. You know, if you have a hard day, you can still dance. If you're sad, you still dance. You know, the music, I didn't understand the importance of music. Like, I was like, oh yeah, there's a few songs I like before I left. It's like, it's not about that. It's like the dance stopped being the focus for me when I went there, because it was like, yeah, but who am I dancing with? And I haven't talked to my friends yet, you know, and I'm not going to dance to this song because it's shitty, or I'm not going to accept this dance because it's going to have a different feeling to it, or, you know what, this song's so damn good, why ruin it? I just want to be with this song and me, you know? Or
and, and so I completely understand what you're saying. So can you put into words how was it before Lisbon then? Was it I don't know if superficial is the right word, but
it was a dance. It was a dance I enjoyed. It was music I enjoyed. And it was like,
was it
it
just
was
a
like
hobby?
it was like a plant without roots, you know? And I always think like, you know, it was like a plant that had like really limited roots. And so for me personally, in my own dance journey, I don't need my tree to get bigger. I want my root system to be better. So I want to continue to grow my understanding of, you know, of culture, of language, of history, of music, of all of these things. You know, for me, it's about the roots. And I didn't understand before I left how much it's important, because, you know, people say, you know, oh, well, women are racist against white guys in the Kizomba scene.
I've never heard this, but okay.
Or like, you know, they only want to dance with a Palop, or they only want to dance with an African, or, you know, I know that in Australia, because there's relatively few Africans, as soon as there's an African man there, it's like glue, you know, it's like an ambush.
I
So,
bet you that African probably loves it though. I know that for a fact.
well, but I guess the thing is that people think it's like, oh, like a color of skin or something. It's not. That when you've been listening to this music your whole life, it's like it's in your veins, it's in your body, it's in everything. You know, when people continue, I had, you know, friends from São Tomé, from Angola, you know, from Cabo Verde, and it's like, you know, every new song that came out, I know one of my friends, he had it on an app already. So it was new. I had never heard it in a club before, and he's singing all the words. And I'm like, I've never heard this song before. I look it up. It just came out. It just came out a couple of weeks ago, and he knows all the words. I'm like, how is this? You know, because this is the thing. It's not like I go to dance and then I dance how I can. It's like, no, you don't want to make a fool of yourself when you go. You need to know the song.
Yeah, definitely.
So, you know, this is totally different. It's totally different. And, you know, I'm so grateful to, you know, Lucia Nogueira, to Tanya Mendoza, to Vanessa Jingapura, because it was learning about the background story, you know, learning about the culture. It stops judgments happening, you know, like a lot of Palop men, they may have a wife and they may have a mistress and whatever. And it's like, well, you know, in Angola, there was civil war for 25 years. You know, a lot of men are gone. Like, a lot of men have been killed. So when the proportions are like that, what's going to happen realistically? You know, so seeing things in context and deepening our understanding of music and culture and, you know, life of people is really important, I think, in the dance.
Okay. I definitely understand and I agree with it. Um, I don't want to hold you too much longer, but I'm very curious to know. Um, could you put into words the difference between the dancers in Lisbon and the dances that you had in Australia? Was
Oh,
there a noticeable difference in them?
absolutely. It's totally different. It's totally different. You know, in Western culture, people are always looking above the surface. They're always looking, if they're looking at an iceberg, they're looking at the tip. They're like, how can we make the tip bigger? How can we make the tip more interesting? How can we make the tip crazier? You know? Whereas in Lisbon, they didn't worry about the tip. They were looking underneath the surface. You know, I will remember one man for the rest of my life. I danced about 10 songs with him. And it was the first time I danced it. And I would very rarely dance that long with someone I don't know. And do you know what he did for the 10 songs? Basic 2.
The side to side or what?
Yep, side to side. But in so many different ways, I couldn't stop dancing with him because I was like, what's coming next? How are you going to do this next?
That's
First,
awesome. That sounds
at
amazing.
first I thought he was waiting to check me out or to see how I moved to put something in. No, that was it. Amazing.
Amazing. And so I think that might prove a point. Even I get caught up in this though. The feeling as a lead that I need to do something fancy to make sure the follow has a good time. I think that kind of disproves that, huh?
Well, I think it depends who you're dancing with. You know, if you're dancing with someone who's focused on the tip of the iceberg, you know, maybe your the tip of your iceberg has to be fancy, you know, in order for that follow to be happy. But I think that it depends who you want to be dancing with and why you want to be appreciated and by who. You know, I know that in Australia, you know, people don't come to my classes because I don't do tricks. I don't do lifts. And I refuse to until the technique, the foundation, the bottom of the iceberg is built enough to make it safe, to make it musical, to make it pleasurable for people. That's it.
That's super important though. That's super super important. And I'll speak on that. I'm pretty sure in the long run that'll make you such a much better dancer in the long run. Correct? In the long
I
run.
believe so. But you know, it's creating, sometimes it's really hard for teachers because you have to create your market of people who care. You know, create your market of people who invest. I'm really lucky. I run 10-week courses, 2 hours a week, full commitment. A lot of people don't want that. So I attract people who are patient, who want to work, who care about music, who care about the base of the iceberg.
Okay. I mean, yeah. So yeah. I think I've heard someone say this that don't waste your time on trying to convince people who don't believe. Just attract who wants what you have, right?
Absolutely.
So I understand that. Um, I wanna I wanna ask you a couple more questions, but I wanna
Yeah,
kind of just I wanna make them really quick. All right.
sure, take your
So
time.
well, I want you to answer them kind of quick. All right.
Okay.
So what advice can you give to someone who's stuck in a beginner's rut?
Music. Absolute music. I think that if you connect with a good teacher, I mean, I have lots of lists that I put always up our Kizomba in the Park um, playlists on Spotify. You're more than welcome to listen to those if they float your boat. But I would absolutely be listening to music because that is the difference between a beginner's basic 2 and this 10-song basic 2 extravaganza. You know, the step was the same, but the musicality and the creativity is what changes you from a beginner dancer.
And so you kind of said the next part. When I say the word musicality, what does that mean to you?
For me, musicality is expression of what the music is telling you. Because when you dance with someone who really feels that song, you don't have to listen to the music. You know, of course you do listen, but there's this absolute delight. I know from a follower's perspective, there's and I lead as well, of course. So I know that it's nice from a lead's perspective, but from a follower's perspective, there's this absolute delight that happens in the body when the lead and the music are in sync. And you hear the music, you learn to listen to the music through the lead, because parts of the music you didn't know existed are highlighted through the dance. It's just like, oh, yummy.
That's awesome. Is there? How does one improve the musicality? Is it just by listening to the music more often?
I think it's listening to the music, but it's also having music facilitated for you. So, for example, you know, having a teacher who, number one, understands music deeply. And I know that, you know, I understand music, but I know there's people that understand music much more than me. And I continue to get my privates done on music, learning more and more about music. And not just Kizomba, but all of the genres that surround Kizomba, both geographically and culturally and time-wise, is really important. So people that can say, okay, here's the beat. Can you hear the beat? Okay, what about this second beat? Because as we know, a lot of African music has polyrhythms or more than one. So it's like, can you hear the difference between the different drums? What instrument is this? Where does this link in? Is the vocal melodious or is it more talking? So it's how to distinguish between music. It's, you know, where you have a Kizomba song, but you have this compa undertone influence. If you don't know this undertone of compa and where that comes from and how compa's danced, and you're dancing Semba-esque, like da, 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 like, you know, doing tricks or crazy stuff, it's like, hang on, buddy, this is a compa. How about you chill? You know, you need to have some elements of chill in this. So yeah, I think it's listening to music, but also learning about music.
Hey, that's super, super duper important. Very important. Um, how for someone who is an intermediate dancer, how do they get to that advanced level?
It's music. You know, I think that people underestimate consistently how important music is. And, you know, I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and most of the teachers say the same thing: music, 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 music. And yet, people don't do it. And I guess what I hear when I do things, when I actually am with students and I'm doing parts on music, and I have music in every class, important, drawing attention and learning over time. You know, even with some of my students, we did rebita when we were learning the virgula, so we understand that where the contratempo comes from. And I get my students to do the exact same course more than once. And then I just make it harder and stretch it for them. And the first course, they could not hear in the rebita the dung, dung, dung. They couldn't hear this. They couldn't hear it. The second time they could. It's learning that's not a once off. It's learning that happens over time. It's like when you're skiing, you know, and the field is all fresh, and you ski and you ski and you ski and you ski down this same road every time. It's like this crevice. That's like the beat. You know, you just keep going down. But you want to clear that field by understanding every way you can move through the snow.
I like that. I like that. That example. It's pretty cool. And so real quick, last question I want to ask you. Can you give me one tip that could make anyone a better dancer immediately?
Okay, immediately. So music, as I said, takes time. In Kizomba, I think what makes someone a dancer better immediately is pushing through their feet, through the earth, not up and away from the earth.
Okay. So not pushing. I guess so. Makes just pushing down, right? Pushing through your heels downward.
Just your face, like that's usually what people say. Like, look in my class, like it's pushing through the earth with soft knees. I think is how to make your dance like that improve, because the thing is that people don't understand in the way Westerners walk, and it's a dance that's the basis passada, so walking. So when we push up and away from the ground when we walk in a Western way. We push up off the ground, like the ground is a surface, and we push up and away. In Kizomba, there's different ways you can push down into the ground. So say this is the ground. We don't push like this. We push like this. So you see my lower hand is moving. Now, the floor won't move, but it's like I'm pushing into the floor like I want to push it down. And that's how we get the balanza, which is like we push like down like that, or we get the maka like that, or there's another curly one, which only happens with certain Palop men when they really, 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 really like dancing with you. And it goes like, how do I do it with my hands? It's like this.
It's something I have to like see or feel.
Yeah, you really have to. But for visual people, it's pushed through, like you're trying to push the earth down, not the earth is pushing you up.
Okay, like a leg press or something. Okay. You told me something yesterday when we spoke. A tip that you gave to leaders to help them become better followers. What did you say to me?
Absolutely. So, and this is for followers, of course, as well. So I always do the exact same thing whenever I'm dancing with someone. If I'm leading, I ask my follower to push through their feet, soften their knees, slightly sit in their bum, like their bum is so heavy that it's just kind of, like you kind of are just letting it drop there, and let everything in your upper body go down. Give me a hug and stay.
Okay.
And this is how we create the posture. And every time it means that they're able to move smoothly. Every time.
That's perfect. That's perfect. That's something that I definitely will practice the next time I'm on the dance floor. And the
Heavy
next time
bum.
I'm
Heavy
following,
bum.
at least.
Soft knees, heavy
Heavy
bum.
bum. So at this point, Dana, I really want to thank you so much for taking time out to speak with me.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. It's been lovely speaking with you.
Of course, yes, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Real quick, tell me, what are some of your upcoming events? What do you have going on in your life?
So at the moment, I'm in Brisbane. So if you do come to Brisbane, you're welcome. I may do some traveling next year again, but I want people to learn. So that means lots of work and long term. So we do our Kizomba in the Park as a community event for the 2nd and 4th Saturday of the month. Anyone's welcome to come to that. And I also do my Kizomba courses. But you can always find me online. So as I said, next year I'll be doing I call them open flow classes online. And that's probably a good place if you'd like to connect. Otherwise, I'm here in Brisbane for you.
Hey, perfect. And real quick, how can people get in contact with you? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yep, the best way. So I have my business Facebook or my business website, which is Body Mind in Bloom. So bodymindinbloom.com is the website. Facebook /Body Mind in Bloom or Instagram /Body Mind in Bloom. Otherwise, you can definitely reach out to me to my personal Facebook, which is Dana Dana Dobrota Dobrota, and you'll see my smiling face there. And I'm welcome. Any contact is fine.
Awesome. So yeah, like I said, Dana, I really want to just thank you so much for taking time out today to speak with me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you for
And
having me.
of course, and I really can tell, how passionate you are about dancing, and also your business, body psychotherapy, man.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
and
It's
then like
hard.
I said, okay, I believe it. I know it's hard work. I definitely believe it.
Mm,
But yeah, Dana, thank you so much. I will make sure I put all your contact information in the details when I post this.
fantastic.
So look
Thank
out for you that. Hey, perfect, of course, of course. But I think this will wrap it up for this episode of the To the Few podcast. Thank you so much, Dana.
you. Thank you.
Hey, all right.
Ciao.
Ciao.
That's all it is.
Hey everyone, if you made it this far all the way to the end of the video, I want to thank you so much. My overall goal with making these interviews and these episodes is to give a voice to dancers, to give them a platform to speak their story. So if this is of value to anyone, then that means the world to me. My overall goal is to give value to the dance community. So if you find no value in this, then I urge you to please let me know where I can improve on. I truly want to, just give value and content to the dance community. So please let me know how I can improve, where I'm messing up, because to be 100% honest with you, I'm learning along the way as I do this. I truly am. So to be able to interact with the dance community, it means the world to me, because it gives me feedback and it lets me know what I'm doing right, where I can improve upon, what I'm doing wrong, which I feel like might be more important. So please, if you all could comment and just let me know what you think, it means the world to me, because that feedback just helps me improve. So please comment as well. Please like and subscribe. That means a lot as well. But I want to say thank you so much for just watching this, because it means the world to me. I want to take you on this journey of the Two Left Feet podcast. I'm very excited for it. So once again, thank you so much.